Did you see it last time?
You mean Carrie's screen sharing?
Oh, it was my screen that was.
Oh, it was. Yeah. Definitely could see it.
Right,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was up.
Okay.
I'm gonna bring it up again, Barney.
Okay, so I'm going to apologize, but I'm going to bow out because I have an hour drive. So I'd kind of like to, it seems like we have enough chiefs
Okay.
here, to go around for all the Indians. So I'll see everybody.
All right. Safe travel.
Okay, bye.
So Carrie, I actually shared my screen last time because yours wasn't coming up. And I'm happy to do that again. Yeah.
I thought you should be able to see mine.
I can't see it.
Nope.
No?
No.
Here, let me try.
it.
You can see it?
Here, I'm going to go ahead and do it right now.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
Thanks, Mary Lynn.
Can you see
Thank
me?
you.
Okay, good. All right. I'll make it nice and big. Okay.
Oh, wait, but we're doing Carlisle
Yeah.
character.
Carlisle
Okay.
character, the very first one.
Oh, wait. Yeah. Nope, it's up here.
Yeah. So with
There we go.
Carlisle character and Carlisle caring, there are they're interrelated things like land use and housing. So we get to talk about both of those and go back and forth on both of those topics.
And it's just the four of us, so we can have a lot of conversation.
Yes, we can. Welcome,
You can really find out
Christina.
what Christina thinks about these things.
Christina, thanks for hanging in there with us all through all of this. It's really been appreciated. So,
Sure. Well, hi again.
so how would you characterize Carlisle, Christina?
How would I characterize it?
Yes, what's our character?
What's our character? I think it's changing, but I think, I don't know, people who really do value, yeah, I don't know, the fact that it is sort of a more rural town, but close to Boston. I think a lot of people do value all the open space that we have. I know I certainly do. Can I answer that just personally? Because I don't know what other people think.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, no, I definitely value all the conservation land. That's one of the big things that drew me here. And once here, I found out that a lot of people share sort of similar ideas about about a lot of what I believe, environmentally, politically, which I came from a town that I was sort of the odd person out. So I appreciate that. And then once I sort of got ensconced here, I got to know my neighbors, and we've developed a very close-knit neighborhood community. And I also feel very much part of the wider Carlisle community. And I really appreciate that. I feel like it's sort of home, like home.
How long have you lived here, Christina? How long?
A decade.
Ah,
So I'm a newbie. I know I'm a newbie still, but
Well, I thought it was interesting because the group before, almost everyone had been here for at least 10 years, if not longer. And pretty much everyone, when asked, answered that they moved here because they enjoyed the rural character and the open space. But I can say that that was not the case for me when we moved here. My husband had been teaching here, so he was really familiar with the schools. And we were, just thinking about starting a family. So when we lived in Hyde Park, and I loved being close to the city, and I loved having a really tight community and having people close together. So I remember moving here, and that drive from Concord to Carlisle was 5 miles of just hell for us. I was like, oh my God, where are we going? And it took a while. I mean, I have to say that, Barney was actually one of the first people that I met because I played on a town tennis team.
That's
And
right.
without kids in the school system, it took a while to get integrated. So I have to say that my love of this town has grew over time, and now I think it's incredible. But I was a little different than the others who spoke earlier.
no,
Yeah,
I almost
interesting.
I'm so sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it's interesting, Mary Lynn, because we kind of moved out here. Really, it was just kind of happenstance, honestly. You know, we were living in Dorchester, right in the city, and we had children that were in the public school, and you know, it just wasn't a very good public school. And we, even though we're committed to public schools, we just decided it wasn't fair to the kids, you know, to stand on our principles. And so we started looking on the other side of the city, and we just couldn't afford anything closer to the city. We kept moving further out, and we ended up with a realtor that happened to live here in Carlisle. She's moved away since, but we actually came back. We didn't have to move, you know, so we actually came back a year apart. Our first visit, looking at the house we're in now, we thought, oh, wow, this is too much house, too much land, you know, and it was too much. We couldn't afford it. And then things changed in terms of what they were selling it for. They dropped the price. And after we looked a while, we came back and we thought, okay, you know how this was our first house. This was the first house I'd ever bought. So, you know, you have these grand visions. Anyway, we did buy it with some help from parents. And, but I had that same experience, Mary Lynn, of not finding it hard to meet people when you go to where, you know, your neighbors are a good, you know, half acre away from you could be, you know.
But now the funny part is that now that we're here and we start, you know, now the kids are, you know, all my kids have graduated from high school. I've got one graduated from college, and we're starting to think about the opposite end of, like, you know, what do we do next? And the idea of moving back to the city with lots of people around us and having to deal with, you know, like a building with multiple people living in it, you know, we're absolutely, we can't even fathom that idea. Like, now we love the space. You know, we've just loved being here. We love being able to walk across the street and the schools and the people that we've met. And, you know, and I think, you know, I agree with Christina. There's a lot of people who share our mindset on a lot of different topics, which, you know, which make it a really great town to live in.
It does. Yeah.
You know, our earlier group thought that attitudes about open space and the rural nature of Carlisle may be changing with folks that have moved in within the last 10 years, for example, that yes, they may appreciate it, but they also would like to have a lot, you know, like to be able to go for a glass of wine and a nice dinner without having to leave Carlisle sometime, as an example. What do you think of that?
I think again, I don't know what other people feel. I think that I certainly don't mind having to go outside of town to do the bulk of my grocery shopping, although I do like to support Ferns. I don't mind going outside of town to go to restaurants. I think it's part of Carlisle's charm, and I think that towns seem to, other towns especially, just seem to be getting so overpopulated and dense and crowded. And I think that Carlisle is very special, especially being so close to Boston. And I think the more time passes and the more our surrounding towns get denser, I think that the value of Carlisle is going to increase. And I'm not just talking fiscally, I'm talking quality of life. I'm talking, you know, it's, you know, and one of the kitchen conversations that I had mentioned is we're like the Central Park, you know, and it's going to be more valuable, not just to the residents of Carlisle, but to the surrounding towns as well, to have this oasis. And during the pandemic, almost every day I was like, I'm so thankful to be here. And it was a sanctuary. It has been a sanctuary. And I was fine with being closed in because I was here. And I think that you can't put a price on that. It is so important. And I value that so much. Just having the space, having the nature. Yeah.
Well, one of the aspects of the Carlisle caring community is greater diversity of housing. You know, we've talked to a lot of seniors, and you have it as well at kitchen conversations that say, I want to downsize, but there's no place to downsize to. Or I want to, my first house isn't going to be a house that I buy in Carlisle at this point anyway. It's I just can't afford to get there coming right out of the box. So what do you think about the notion of greater diversity relative to this thing about density that you just mentioned?
Right. So for me, it's a bit of a catch-22. I think it's really important to have diversity. I can see how a lot of people think that we're an elite town, an exclusive town, and I don't like it. On the socioeconomic side, I definitely don't like it. Where do we find the balance, right? I think it's very important to have variety of all kinds. How do we go about it? I don't know. It saddens me so much when I see these smaller houses, like these cute capes being torn down and having these McMansions go up. And the whole, even though I think that it was for subdividing land, I think what's going on with West Street and Acton Street is, a lot of thought went into that, so that it won't look like a division of land into smaller lots. But it saddens me because we're taking beautiful land, it's being divided, and more large houses are being built on it, and it's not solving any of the problems that or issues that we should be tackling. It's just more McMansions, or I haven't seen the architecture, maybe that's the wrong term, but anyways, more large structures going in. And so I've been thinking a lot about this, and is there a way to tap into, should another large property be subdivided? Is there a way to tap into kind of getting some of that land for a diverse types of housing on there? So it's not just more large houses, more, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I have no answer to that. I've been thinking about it a lot.
We certainly have the tools to make that happen.
Yeah.
The tools are there to do that. The question is, what's the political will of the town?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I certainly, selfishly, I really value the 2-acre minimum. That's something that I really love about Carlisle, because I like having that space and I don't feel alienated. I think having the space allows neighbors to be more close because you can still have your own privacy. So yeah, I don't know. How do we go about it?
I think it's interesting because I think there are some people who don't necessarily want to change it.
Yeah.
They're willing to deal with higher taxes. They're willing to deal with some of the dealing, not having some perks, as long as they can keep that 2-acre minimum because they moved here for that privacy and that space. So it's just, which is fine. But then you get to the point where, Carlisle becomes a place that only incredibly wealthy people can live.
Right.
So then you price yourself out of it. And that's a tricky situation too. So it's a really tough situation.
It is.
Someone said earlier in the earlier session, we've become a very wealthy town in the last 10 or 20 years. I remember when I talked about taxes to my grandmother, she said, "Are you bragging or complaining?" I think there's a lot to be said about that, about folks in town. There are a lot of folks that can very easily pay the kind of taxes that they're paying, I think. And so to your point about the notion that this is an enclave for the wealthy is not exactly one that we want to foster or identify with. Yeah.
I hate to say it. I think I kind of, oh gosh, I can't believe I'm admitting this, but that was one of the things I was conscious about. I'm like, yes, I'm willing to pay higher taxes to have the space and to have the character of this town. But I realize that completely comes from a place of privilege. And it shouldn't be exclusive to only people who can afford to be here. So yeah, I don't know.
The good news, I think, Christine, is that there are tools. We have tools in a toolkit to change that.
Yeah.
Without turning the world on its head. And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing kind of a change either. It could be very selective, whatever makes sense. But in order to do anything like that, it takes the political will and, what people really want, and not just what do 10% of the people want.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And also sometimes I think the concept of either some additional cluster housing or having people, that are qualified, put a second house on their
Mhm.
2 acres or whatever it is that people think of when they think of, having more density. I think the idea of that, it's got a lot of connotations for people that they don't like. And maybe I'm too much of an optimist here, but I feel that if we had some concrete, specific idea, more than ideas, but specific options that people could really grapple with, that you may not have everybody agree about going forward with something, but at least people would feel that they had been heard and had an opportunity
Right.
to discuss it. And then if, town leadership and others think it's really best for the town, that we do everything we can to bring everybody along in supporting that. And, ultimately something like that would go to town meeting. So then it would be up for a discussion and vote, but also would mean those who think it makes sense for the town really need to be getting out and talking to people about
Yeah.
why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of
I
these
feel,
is
sorry.
commitment to high quality educational opportunities. And there's another tool, Choice or Metco, are other tools that we have for high quality educational opportunities as well as diversity. And yet we've opted up till now not to employ either school choice or Metco. So these are choices that we can make, but we need to know what, what you want.
Well, I mean, I think cluster housing can be a good solution. I mentioned this fear. It's a fear I have. I mentioned it the last forum, and I'll do it again, is the potential of it being a slippery slope, in that, oh, well, they've done it here and they've done it there, so let's go for here and here and here and here and here. And that slowly, it's like it becomes all cluster housing. Of course, that is opposite. That's the pessimist in me as opposed to an optimist in me. But it's like, it's how can it be controlled so that it's not like a runaway thing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think, yes, more cluster housing could definitely work. I think that probably that is a more environmentally sound way to go. I'm environment first. But it's like, how can it be done that it's not like, it doesn't open the door, or it doesn't open a can of worms to and have it end up backfiring, in that it really does affect the character or the look and the feel of Carlisle. And I know that, I'm sure there's a way to do it, but it's a fear that I do have, a concern and a fear that I do have.
Yeah. I think to Carrie's point, it's going to be a multi-tiered process. It's not just housing that's going to solve the problem. There's going to have to be other things that go.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and like the idea of looking into sharing services with other towns and finding other ways to to be able to reduce or keep taxes at a place where people can manage it, so that people don't have to leave town, and we don't have to change all our zoning rules to allow so many people into town. So it's going to take a lot of creative thought, I think, to work it out, but it sounds like it's possible. So
Christina, in the 2 seconds left, thank you very much for hanging with us this whole time. It's been really great.
I've been learning so much, and yeah, I think it's important.
Good.
So my pleasure.
I wanted to do it.
oh, good.
I was getting tired of gardening.
Yeah, I know. Today was a mulching day, and happy to stop.
All right. All right, I'll share my screen again, Carrie.
Thank you.
Don, how long have you lived in town?
10.5 years.
10 and a half?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, what brought you to Carlisle?
the rural character.
Uh-huh.
Proximity to Concord was important to me. My,
But
my
not
life
living in
partner,
Concord, huh?
pardon me?
But not living in Concord.
Well, we like to be more rural,
Yeah.
and at one point, my partner, Ann Gibbs, whom I think you know,
Yeah.
and is probably in, you've probably had her in another session
Yes.
today.
Yes, we did.
She said, why don't we concentrate on Carlisle, as we were looking for a house, and I moving out from Arlington. And that was fine with me.
Great.
I do wish we had a community center of some sort.
Uh-huh.
I think that would, it's really a shame that laws about structural integrity of FRS mean that we can't have the wonderful monthly folk song or singer-songwriter concerts, whatever they were. I loved those.
Oh, I didn't even know that. So structurally, you mean in the big meeting space, you can't have a large group?
The size group that made that the concert series financially feasible could no longer meet there.
Huh.
And there has to be a person in the church or whatever the organization is who is responsible for checking that and making sure that the number of people, the occupancy doesn't exceed the amount that's stated. Now, do I want to be in a building which collapses and maybe die because
Right.
I'm not saying, oh, those terrible government bureaucrats, they're ruining my life. I think it's important to be safe too.
Livingston Taylor was a sellout,
Yeah.
and they actually had to give everybody's money back.
Yeah.
Too many people bought tickets. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still a very popular venue for a whole host of other activities and programs for the Council on Aging, for example.
Yes, indeed.
Couldn't we use the school auditorium for something like that? I mean, I know it's not as quaint as FRS, but it certainly has a larger capacity. You could get a larger group in there.
Well, that's very interesting. I assume people have looked at that, but I don't know. That's a very good idea.
So one of the comments we've heard, Don, from earlier sessions was that over time, Carlisle has continued to change, that it's also continued to age, and that the folks a generation or so ago might still be interested in open space, but the folks of this generation might be less interested in open space and more interested in more amenities. Do you think that seems to be a trend?
I don't know. I will tell you a pet peeve of mine. The term open space, I think, is really inappropriate. A parking lot is open space. A forest is not open space. It's got trees and things in it. And I think natural space would be an appropriate term. I don't know why it hasn't. I know that there are state and federal laws which use that phrase, and that may be necessary for us to somehow use that term, but I think it's a terrible term and it devalues natural land.
The other flip side of this Carlisle character is, and very tightly linked to it, is Carlisle Caring, which is where we talk about things like diversity of housing and support for an aging population and good schools for everybody that is of school age. And we've also heard about people saying, well, I have this whole house I'm rattling around in. I'm an empty nester, but I'd like to downsize, but I have to leave Carlisle in order to do that because there's no other place to go. Has that been something that's top of mind for you and for Anne?
I would very much like to have, I'm embarrassed that I live in such a white community, totally white community. And yes, I know we have some Asian people, and that's great, but I am embarrassed, as I say. And I think the cost of housing is a big part of the reason there aren't more African Americans in particular living here. I don't know. I do know that that's a big part of it. On the other hand, in another group, we were just discussing how Concord has a lot of Black people living in it, but most of them are in the two prisons. But they are recorded as
Wow.
as part of the population.
Huh.
Really? Is that really true?
It's really true.
Wow.
I have
Boy,
known it
that's
before
terrible.
today's discussion of that. And
Wow.
I'm told somebody in the, it was either John Ballantyne or somebody else in that group, said that African Americans of some means are moving to Concord because they look at the population statistics and
Huh.
think, oh, there are some Black people there. And it astounds me that people would make a decision to move there without having more understanding of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's a really complicated issue. I don't know how to, I certainly don't have the solution. I didn't come to this group with a solution, but I would like to have our community be more diverse.
Well, one of the things that another thing that Concord has done is that they've embraced Metco
Yes.
and all the way down to the kindergarten level in Concord. And of course, we have not. And we've chosen time and again not to for whatever reason. And we have also chosen not to be have school choice here in Carlisle in K through 8. So there are some tools that would help mitigate your concerns somewhat, but we've so far opted not to employ them.
Well, I didn't come with answers. I came more with questions.
So do we all, Don.
I will say in one other group, I pointed out something that concerned me about the overall value statement. Was told it was a really good point, and yet I didn't see any willingness to even talk about changing something because of public input.
What was the concern?
It was about the term climate change resilience, and which I thought the thing ought to be reworded. I think probably resilience to climate change is something we ought to be thinking about, but I thought it ought to be listed last, and that reducing the impact on climate change ought to be listed before that.
Was this on the environmental sustainability or the overall? Okay, environmental sustainability. Yeah.
And believe me, I understand that to some extent, working with the public like this is a matter of doing something that's really necessary to do, but it gets to be a bit of a pain in the ass if people want changes in what's there. And maybe I was the only one who did, who knows? But I,
So your comment, Don, I just want to understand this, is if you look at the goals, so switching well, I don't know, these really aren't in a priority order, but you're saying that the safeguarding from the impacts of climate change is something we should be addressing before we try to strengthen the environmental sustainability policies?
I just think that resilience to climate change ought to come after reduction of the community's impact on natural environment, including climate change, is the way I would do it. I didn't say that during the discussion, but now I see.
Okay. Oh, I see. You're looking at the right, the statement up there.
Value
Gotcha.
statement, yeah.
The value statement. Okay.
Right. Right. And I think that the things that are listed under that are much better.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. So just so I capture this in the notes, because sorry, I was looking at the goals. So you would put the resilience to climate change in terms of the order of these values, put that first.
No, last.
Or last, you're saying. Okay. And
so
then
it would be Carlisle values natural resource conservation,
yeah,
reduction of the community's impact on the natural environment,
yeah,
including climate change, and resilience to coming climate change or something like that.
gotcha. Okay. All right. I understand now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm the note taker.
I appreciate that. Not an easy job.
Pretty easy when it's just the four of us.
Yeah, but we are planning to discuss everything that we get in the notes. So we will definitely discuss this as the committee when we look at it again. So
Okay.
your
In
words
the
will be heard.
previous- Sorry, in the previous, my first breakout group, I didn't get around to suggesting a specific changing of the value statement. But I did raise some concerns about the phrase resilience to climate change. I know that some bad impacts are already baked into the situation because of climate change that has already happened and climate change that can't be avoided, a level of climate change that cannot be avoided now.
Right.
But I think a change in that wording would be a good thing.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think the goals look good. But it wasn't until I got the goals that I resonated at all with the value statement.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Huh. Okay.
Thank you.
Don, I'm hopping late into this conversation. Was your note about that referring just to this particular value, that the value statement didn't resonate with you until you saw the goals?
Yes.
Okay, so it was for
Yes,
this.
indeed.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
And I heard you suggest, when I came in, you were suggesting that, that your particular issue with resilience to climate change as wording.
Well, I felt that should be listed last
In terms of priority.
because I saw that and I sort of stopped reading, I'm afraid.
Okay, okay. That's helpful feedback. How's the discussion going here? I know it's three of you and one helpful member of the public.
Well, it's really reinforced a lot of what we've already heard in many respects about, how we've become a richer community over time and less diverse community, perhaps, or not any more diverse community over time. And that's a concern. It's not easy to understand or change necessarily.
Mhm.
Wondering what the tools are that we would have or want to employ to make those changes. And if we have some, why aren't we using them?
I mean, a big part of it, you know, a consideration is capacity. And I know that your town obviously has extensive volunteer capacity. And that is something I think that is fairly unique and wonderful to see. But you know, there's only so much people can do as volunteers, and you know, so when you ask, well, what else can be done? I mean, that's something that you know, an experienced town planner should know things. Not that that came out wrong. Your town planner is lovely, but he was part-time, correct? You know, you had a part-time town planner. You know, so it's just, I mean, to me as an outsider, like so much of it seems like a capacity issue, and that's maybe where some extra investment needs to go, because there are people who are experts who could say, these are things that you should be doing. And that's, you know, some of what we're hoping to do with this process. But then after the master plan, then what? You know, it needs to be implemented. Who's going to implement it? So that's, so to your question, Carrie, of why haven't we been doing it? I think that's a large part. You definitely have the caring and involved community aspect involved already. So,
Well, that's interesting, because one of the questions that came up on Thursday night, in fact, in the first breakout group, was what does it really mean to be a caring community? And are we really a caring community, or we care about ourselves first? And are we really thinking about what's in the best interest of the community at large? And they, you know, some of the things that came up were like housing. Like, we haven't done anything about housing. We could be working, you know, for many years now, there's been ideas about, like, we've known about this 1962 thing, and, you know, there could have been stronger movement to try to make changes earlier, but we haven't done that. So what does that really mean about Carlisle as a whole? And so it was interesting discussion about, you know, how to define what caring.
And well, and so the other thing, you know, coming back to capacity, and this also goes with the connectivity of fostering connection among existing town boards and committees and staff, between and among them. And I think, you know, this is something that I still need to learn more about within your community, but I know it seems also like administrative support for volunteer boards and whatnot is limited. So you have these people who are so very interested in doing, you know, making things happen, like you have a housing trust, but how much support at the staff level do they get? I don't know, as someone coming in and trying to learn more, but you do. And is that something that you think, if Carlisle wants to show that they're a caring community with regard to housing, as an example, okay, well, how do we support our housing trust? You know,
See what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely, oh, we will be closing in 58 seconds. So I'm going to go back to the main room, and I'll be there to say goodbye to anybody, but you can also just feel free to sign off. And Don, thank you for coming this afternoon. I hope it was helpful to you. And hopefully we'll see you through further engagement in the summer and fall.
I'd like to be involved.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.